Thank you all for being with us today. Our first item of business, as usual, is our report from our own staff, our City Clerk, Deborah Owen.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. Just a couple of reminders that are in your memo this week. That there is a Land Use Committee meeting today after the informational to discuss amendments to the Engineering Design Standards Manual and then also the liquor license conditional use permits. In addition, just to let you know that we're circulating, for those of you who support Senate Bill 126 concerning liquor license legislation, we'll be sending or faxing that out to the Sioux Falls delegation this evening, and hoping that the House will vote in favor of Senate Bill 126. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deborah. I know we have some staff reports later in the agenda, so we will go ahead to our committee reports, and we'll start with Audit Committee. Councilor Kavanaugh.
No report.
Fiscal Committee, Councilor Costello.
No report.
Land Use Committee, Councilor Jameson.
No report, but we will have a meeting following this meeting.
Okay, thank you. And Councilor Brown, would you provide a Public Services Committee report if there is one?
No report. Thank you.
Thank you. And open discussion on any other item today, please, by any of you? I would like to make a reminder to the listening public that tomorrow, February 26th, is the last day to complete the citizen survey with our performance measurement program that we are doing. We've had a phenomenal response rate so far. Last I heard it was over 33%. And so we encourage a few more people to get in their surveys and get them done tomorrow and mailed in. And then we will be sharing those results before too long with all of you. Any other open discussion items? Councilor Jameson?
I'd had a letter from a constituent that was concerned about people plowing snow, pushing from one side to the other. I don't know if anyone else received that letter.
Yes.
I thought there was an ordinance against that you couldn't push it across the street on somebody else's property.
Yes.
Madam Chairman.
City Attorney?
Yes, we've had the same complaint, and we've researched the ordinances. The only ordinance that is applicable is the one that does not allow you to pile your snow so as to block a sidewalk. We don't have an ordinance that at least that was my understanding from my staff when the question came to us.
Well, it just seems illogical that we would let someone push snow from one person's property to another. There must be some way to change that. Do we need to revise the ordinance?
We could certainly take a look at the ordinance. It may well be a private property matter. I mean, we don't regulate people dumping things other than snow on other people's property. That is a private issue between the two. But we do regulate the keeping of our sidewalks clear, and that's why it's not appropriate for you to take snow from your property and block another neighbor's property.
However, I can't alter drainage that it forces water on somebody else's property.
That is correct.
And that's what you're doing with snow.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd be interested in working with someone to sponsor something to correct that. If anybody else is interested, why, let me know.
Councilor Costello?
Gary, I believe this letter, the real concern wasn't necessarily snow, but it was trash and debris that would get accumulated with it. Wouldn't there be a pretty pervasive argument for a littering fine of some sort?
Yes, if there were debris that was being dumped with the snow, I would certainly say so. But we have had a number of complaints in the city attorney's office about people bringing snow from their property on one side of the street and dropping it on the other side of the street. And all we have been able to tell them or ask them is it blocking the sidewalk? And if it's not, if it is not blocking the sidewalk, then we have simply told them that there is no ordinance that we can use to deal with the situation.
It's kind of interesting that we have an ordinance that you can't push snow into the street, but you can push it across the street. That's interesting.
Okay. We will continue with our staff reports for today, and we'll start out with the Washington Pavilion 2007 financial results and activity. And Sandra Pay, the chair of the Pavilion Board of Trustees, and Jane Hathaway, the director of finance, will provide that presentation. And thank you both for being here today.
I'm Sandra Pay. I'm with 1900 South Thank you. I hope you could hear that.
See that?
I'm speaking as the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Washington Pavilion, and as Dee said, Jane Hathaway is with me. Jane is no stranger to you. She is the financial officer at the pavilion and also at this time the acting CEO. If you were listening to Chicken Littles last fall, you would certainly have thought that the sky was falling at the pavilion. The CEO had left or was leaving. The development director had left. The director of marketing was on his way to Boulder, Colorado. What is happening at the pavilion, we were hearing in the community. It was a challenging time, we will admit that, but both senior staff and the volunteer leadership agreed that we were going to have to step up and fill in the gaps. We weren't going to allow the pavilion to go backwards. We didn't even want it to stand still, so we were going to have to turn those challenges into golden opportunities. And as a result, 2007 ended as one of the best years the pavilion has had. In the Science Center, there were 85,000 visitors, 20,000 of those were children. The new gallery, Starting Line, Fit for Life, a partnership with Avira McKinnon, has been extremely popular. Even the films in the Cinedome were selling better than usual, and some of those films were translated into Spanish to accommodate our ever-growing Spanish-speaking population. The Science Center's Ag Day, a family event in March that teaches about an important part of our economy, continues to be very popular. And the Wellness Festival coming up in April, now in its 4th year, has been increasing in attendance every year. The interactive booths, I will tell you, is a great way or a depressing way to learn how fit you are. The Visual Arts Center was only one of 4 galleries in North America to host the international exhibit Taiwan Within the Mist, and over 12,000 people from this area came to see that 6-gallery exhibit. I hope when you were at the pavilion you have seen the Off the Fridge exhibit on the posts on the 2nd floor gallery. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, artwork from one school a month is matted, framed, and hung on the pillars. There is a gallery reception held for the participating 40 to 60 children, and after the exhibit closes, the children are able to take their artwork home along with the tag that identifies them. This is such a popular program that we now have a waiting list for schools in the year 2010. The Performing Arts Center was a real star this year. The Husby Performing Arts Series sold a record number of subscriptions. Many of the shows exceeded budget, and 2 completely sold out. A great number of the artists from the series went out to the schools to give performances and workshops, and we are very grateful for that. The pavilion has several shows for family and children. One of them this year was Addie, the American Girl, and if you are familiar with the American Girl dolls, you know that Addie is the child of slave parents in early America, and through the performance, children can begin to understand what life was like for children in America in that part of our history. Our performance also included the possibility of a sleepover at the pavilion with a dinner that was soul food. And we had an astronomer come and talk about the Underground Railroad and how the slaves used the stars in order to find their way to freedom in the North. Thanks to a grant from the Bush Foundation, a new director of community engagement and learning was hired last summer, and really and truly we need to send you just a report on her activities and what is happening in education in the pavilion. It is absolutely fabulous, and I think you will be delighted. This director has put together support staff and a volunteer committee that strengthens the pavilion's commitment to education, and it also positions the pavilion as one of the leading education resources in the region. We're just finishing up our work on a strategic plan, and I've been involved with nonprofits for very many years, and in all those years, I have never seen a strategic planning process and subsequent plan that is as comprehensive, focused, and engaging in this one. And there is now a board committee in place who will keep this plan from gathering dust, but instead be used to guide us toward our agreed goals for the next few years. Best news, a director of development has been hired. She's just what we need. She's very organized, she's inspiring, and she's got great sales skills. She cracked the whip and got us all working in the fall, and I have to tell you that year-end at the Pavilion was so exciting. On December 31st, I think we were all hugging the phones and sitting at our computers waiting for Jane to give us what she thought were going to be the final figures for the year. And I am very pleased to tell you that in 2007, the unaudited figures for the operating funds show the Pavilion about $26,000 in the black. One of the most time-consuming activities this fall was the search for a new CEO. We had a good committee that was made up of Pavilion family and also members of the community. The consultant we used knew the Pavilion and also knew Sioux Falls. I don't know if you realize how unique the Pavilion is. There is only one other institution in the United States that is similar to the Washington Pavilion. We therefore felt that we needed a very unique person as our next leader, somebody with a lot of breadth to his or her experience. And we think we found that somebody, and he and his wife will be here next week. You all have invitations to the announcement reception next Tuesday on the stage of the Great Hall, and we hope that you'll be able to come. Also next week, as if we don't have enough going on, the accreditation committee from the American Association of Museums will be here to do a site visit as the final step toward the accreditation for the Pavilion. This is a huge step for us. If we can become accredited, that puts us on the big map and opens up all kinds of doors for activities and funding. So we are crossing our fingers that we will come through that site visit with flying colors. I'm very proud of the Pavilion staff and volunteers, the spirit of camaraderie that had us working together. The last months has been infectious. I will tell you that the Pavilion means a great deal to all of us. We know about the economic impact that we have on the city. We're well aware that tourists come here and people move here because of the Pavilion. We know how important our education classes and activities are for citizens of all ages, and we want everyone to continue to enjoy the quality of life offered by the Pavilion and its programs. So last summer, there wasn't an alternative but to join together and work very hard to make 2007 the best possible year. As far as those Chicken Littles, we haven't heard much from them lately, and I think that perhaps our new development team has made them into members and donors. If you have any questions, we'd be glad to try to answer them. And I do apologize. I am having a terrible time with sinus trouble right now. So Jane is here to ask questions. Kermit, we know you've got one.
Well, maybe a couple, Sandra.
Oh, a couple. Oh, my gosh.
Sandra, you mentioned that this is really a very unique facility in the United States, and there's only one other facility like this. Can you explain to us this uniqueness?
The uniqueness is in the fact that we combine a science center, performing arts. You can find performing arts and visual arts, but to find the science center, the visual arts, and the performing arts is truly unique.
And then the other question I had is, with the $1.3 million operating subsidy in the budget, you came out $26,000 in the black, which is great. But I was wondering, we had a lot of people leaving, and to go to other locations, and so we're not paying their salary. So is part of this because we're not paying the salary of a number of these people that were in the black?
No, actually, it's not. And you're right, there were some salaries, but we also had to hire some other people to fill in. But the one that most people ask about is Steve Hoffman, because you assume that there is a great deal of saving. But he was here for almost 10 years. And when you pay off all of the benefits and the accrued the accrued holiday and sick leave, there wasn't a lot of money left over. And also included in that, we had to pay for the consultant to help us find the replacement. So there was not a great deal of savings in salaries.
Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Sandra, for your report. One thing to confirm what you were saying about people living here because of the pavilion, I was visiting with some people that moved here from Poland, and I asked them they're professionals. I asked them what keeps them in Sioux Falls because they could work anywhere. They said two things: the Washington Pavilion and our bike paths. So I have some anecdotal information to back up what you're saying. I was wondering if you or Jane might have any economic impact measurements for the year of 2007, what the Washington Pavilion does for our economy in Sioux Falls.
Jane was working on that today.
Jane Hathaway, Director of Finance for the Washington Pavilion. And yes, Sandra's correct. I did pull out the calculator today. The Americans for the Arts has a calculator on their website that we have used. And this is based on our budget only. And it does not include all of the other promoters and outside agencies that come in and use our facility. This is only the shows that we put on. So it doesn't include the symphony or jazz and blues or any of those other big shows. This is just our budget. And in 2007, the economic impact was calculated to be $13.7 million. And I can get you that information if you'd like to see that.
Thank you both very much, and thank you for your work at our wonderful Washington Pavilion. Oh, sorry, Councilor Kavanaugh, sorry.
Jane, in past years, we've noticed that regardless of what the bottom line is, we see, for example, Performing Arts Center generally makes money. Kirby perhaps loses money, as well as the visual arts. Anything changed in that makeup this year?
No, actually, that stayed pretty constant. And that is very unusual for the Performing Arts Center to be doing so well compared to other performing arts organizations across the country. And that is something that we are working on in our strategic plan to even that out a little bit between the three areas. Of course, the Visual Arts Center is free of charge for admission, and so the other two help subsidize that. But yes, the Performing Arts Center did have a very good year financially, and that isn't always the case in others.
Okay. Thank you again. Now, Councilors, I'd like to add or move item C up on the agenda, and so we're going to handle item C next, and that's going to be the Menards East Retail Store Mitigation item. And Paul Clinton from Dakota Land Surveying, Greg Greenfield from Boyce Greenfield Pashby Law Firm, and Tom O'Neill from Menards Incorporated are here with us today to give us an update on this item. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Greg Greenfield. I've been before you once or twice. I'm an attorney in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I'm here to talk to you again about water, but in a little different sense. I've been working with Menards, and Menards is currently under an order from the EPA to perform mitigation for activities which originally were conducted near its 10th Street store. This process is long and involved, but after looking at 9 or 10 different sites, one of the sites that we looked very hard at was, for lack of better words, the Slip Up Creek site that is owned by the City of Sioux Falls. When you do mitigation for the EPA, the mitigation requirements are that you don't get to mitigate one for one, and so we're under an order that we have to mitigate 3 times as much stream bank as were impacted by the original building at Menards. in looking at this, I think that it's a win-win situation. Menards is under an order to get something done. Menards is willing to spend between $250,000 and $300,000 to improve a stream that's on property owned by the City of Sioux Falls. The city gets this done, Menards pays for it, the EPA is happy. We do have an EPA-approved mitigation plan. What we'd like to do, or what we'd like to present today, is I'd like to make the introductions. We've got Paul Clinton, who's going to show you the existing 10th Street Menards store. He's also going to talk about the mitigation plan and what we're going to be doing at the site. One of the other partners that's involved is East Dakota Water Development District, and Jay Gilbertson from East River Water Development District is here. We've got representatives from Menards, Tom O'Neill and Paul Mahler. If you have any questions, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to Paul, and he can explain where we're at and where we're going to try to go.
Hi, I'm Paul Clinton. I'm a landscape architect with Dakota Land Surveying and Engineer here in Sioux Falls. Why mitigate? Well, there's an alleged violation at the Menards East Side store. And we picked the mitigation site at 477th Avenue was selected because it meets the city's, the regional, state, and federal objectives of improving the watershed, and that would be the Big Sioux River watershed. Next, please. Here is the, I got to learn how to use this equipment. Well, okay. I did. Oh, there it is. This is the Menards site, and that is that air photo from mid-1990s, and that's prior to any development. And you'll see that this blue line parallels the channel that's part of the violation. Next, please. These photos are of the channel before construction. This circle and this circle are the same target tree for the photo. And this one on the left is about midway in the site, looking downstream toward the east. The one on the, can't aim here, on the right is about 300 feet away from the road, looking east again. Next, please. And this is what the site looks like today. That was taken last summer. Excuse me. Next, please. The mitigation site at 477th Avenue is this little red area here on Slip Up Creek. It's north of I-90. The reason it's a good site for mitigation, it's reasonably close to the site where the violation was. As Greg said, we needed to mitigate 3 to 1. This is one of the only places where we had 4,000 linear feet of stream that was contiguous. This site provides positive environmental impacts. We can improve water quality, bank stabilization, improve the flood capacity, excluding cattle from the stream itself will reduce the nutrient loads of the stream, and revegetating the site to more native vegetation will also improve the site environmentally. And Slip Up Creek is one of the most impaired tributaries of the Big Sioux in our watershed. Next, please. This is photos of the existing site as it exists today. And you can see there's some bank erosion here. It's pretty minor in this photo and this photo here. Next, please. But this is what I've called the clay cliff. This, what's happening is the stream in high flow events is undercutting the bank right here and causing this bank to slough. And this bank is like 40 feet tall, so it's all sloughing back into the river, causing additional sedimentation to the creek. This is looking upstream. This photo is looking downstream at the same clay cliff. You can see here another erosion problem where the water's eroding out the bank, trying to move around. Next slide, please. The cattle, impacts from cattle just roaming across the stream. You can see in this is a cattle trail. They cross the stream. They do their duty in the stream or wherever. They destroy the banks, causing nutrient loading and sedimentation in the bank, in the river, I mean. On site, there's an existing small feedlot operation, and the nutrients will go right into the stream. In the plan that we create a buffer between the feedlot and the creek itself. Next, please. The mitigation goals and objectives is to improve a degraded riparian waterway, reestablish the health of that system, stabilize the creek banks, and install soft practices. That means not concrete, be erosion blankets and hay bales to reestablish the banks, maintain diversity of plant habitat, exclude the cattle from the stream bank to reduce erosion and nutrient loading of the stream. Next slide, please. One of the techniques to help to preserve the site is to use an easement, and this easement is not a permanent easement. This easement and the fencing off of the waterway will increase the protection level that's already provided by the Source Water Protection Overlay District. We'll remove the sediments from the surface water before it gets to the creek. We'll retain and protect the existing floodplain, and in result, that'll help recharge the groundwater, and will increase and protect the native vegetation that's there in the wildlife habitat. Next slide, please. And now I'd like to introduce Jay Gilbertson from East Dakota.
Thank you again, Jay Gilbertson, East Dakota Water Development District. I come up for this one slide. Why it's important is, as Paul and Greg mentioned, there are some very definite water quality improvement issues that would result from this mitigation along Slip-Up Creek. Although not technically impaired because it doesn't have standards that are directly applied to Slip-Up Creek. When we have done sampling in years past, we have found elevated nutrient levels, sediment load in the stream, and bacteria in the water that if it had standards applied to it, it would most certainly fail. And as you're well aware, once this water gets into the Big Sioux River, it's a major contributor to the impairments that we do see in the Big Sioux. And so we look at the opportunity provided by this easement going on to the city property along Slip-Up Creek is a very definite and a very positive impact, one that we would otherwise perhaps have to find funding to pay for some other way. And although it's unfortunate in Menard's case, they had some problems, they're having to fix something, we have the advantage of today of being able to have them fix something that needs to be repaired. And I'll turn it back to Paul. Thank you.
Councilor Stagers.
Oh,
You
sorry.
mentioned there was no standards for this creek. Why not?
Because most water bodies in the state, lakes and streams, have some very minimal standards, wildlife use and that sort of thing. The major standards that typically will get a stream or river identified as impaired have to do with recreational uses like swimming and what's called limited contact recreation, which is fishing. Slip-Up Creek, although certainly a big stream by maybe local standards, doesn't really rise to the size. It's not one that's been identified on any state lists. If they were to include it, it most definitely would fail and be listed, but it just technically isn't listed as being impaired right now. But again, its water goes into the Big Sioux, and the Big Sioux's got some real problems. So, all right. Thank you.
I'm not going to read to you, but, what the city gets for the $250,000 or $300,000 is a stabilized bank, a buffer zone, restored vegetation, new fences, gates, a low water crossing, and a well. How do we accomplish this? is that there are two documents that you don't have in front of you, but which have been drafted, and we will be providing you in the near future. That would be a conservation easement agreement, and it would also be an agreement between the city, Menards, and East Dakota Water Development District. Those are completed. You've got 3 levels of oversight to make sure that this is done correctly. The first level is the EPA isn't going to let us not do it correctly. They will send inspectors out to make sure that we do it correctly. You'll also have the city staff and officials checking on our work. Paul Clinton's going to be checking on the work, and then the final person that checks on the work is East Dakota Water Development District. I think this is a great private-public partnership. The city has an impacted area that Menards is willing to step up and fix. If I've learned anything else, it's that you people want to know about these things ahead of time. We're here, we're trying to inform you before we get to the easement stage and the agreement stage, and if you have any questions, we'd love to try to answer them.
Councilor Litz.
Thanks, Greg. I was not here when this. I remember when the Menards went in, and I'm not familiar with what actually went on back there.
Well, there was an unnamed tributary, and on that unnamed tributary, that eventually, when the parking lot was pushed out, that unnamed tributary was removed and culvert was placed underneath the parking lot. That culvert then emptied into a detention pond. That detention pond wasn't designed just for Menards. It also wound up being designed as an overflow pond for other people in the basin. And what the EPA came in and said was that you didn't get a clean water permit, and because you didn't get a clean water permit, you're in violation of the Clean Water Act, and that's how we got here.
So it was basically just a permit. I mean, it was a regional pond then? It turned into a regional pond?
Correct.
So you didn't have a BMP pond in front of that? Was there?
No, I don't, Kevin. It was just a detention pond, was it not, Steve?
Would you come to the microphone, please, and identify yourself also?
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Quincy. I work for Sayer Associates. We're the consultant involved with Menard in this project. There is a pond upstream of the site. That pond performs 2 functions. It is regional. It provides a detention function, a reduction of the flow, also provides a BMP function. So there's 2 components to the pond.
Very good. So the water that's still flowing back there today is cleaned up. It's just that you didn't have the permit in the first place for some.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilor Sagers.
Yeah, I was just wanting to clarify. Menards owns the building and the land, is that right?
It owned the land where the violation occurred, but the City of Sioux Falls owns the land on which the mitigation would be performed.
Okay. Well, let me ask another, if I can ask another
Yes,
quick
of course.
question. Okay, we're going to have this improvement at Slip Up Creek. Okay, now in the future, it's inevitable that there's going to be deterioration of this improvement, just over the years, erosion and so forth. Now, by making it so much better, and then when we have the erosion taking place in the future, is the city going to be mandated to spend money then to go back and...
No. The city has a choice. The easement is going to exist so long as the mitigation plan takes. After that, the easement will terminate, but if the city so wanted, and in leasing the property, if the city wanted to leave the conservation easement on that particular stream, it could do so.
Okay.
One of the things that's going on at this particular location is that the city is leasing that property to somebody that's using it for the pastured effect. But if you want to leave the gates up and the fences up and those things, that would be great and I think helpful to the city. Sure.
Jay Gilbertson again. As we work on riparian improvements up and down the Big Sioux Basin, one of the things that we hope to be able to demonstrate and have quite successfully to the landowners, for the people who are getting some assistance initially, but is that in the long run you can improve your property, you can make more money if that's what you're looking to, and still maintain or follow land use practices that will protect the environment. So we would hope that by removing some of the less desirable land use practices now, mitigating the site, even at the end of all of this, if the city continues to own the property, you look at this and go, you know what, this worked out well, we can still lease the land and we can still do what we need to do without having to degrade the resource.
If I could just make a comment, and if you could respond to it. I mean, I think it's ironic that we have a situation here where Menards is being fined because of a paperwork violation. I mean, that's what it boils down to. And now we're going to have an area of a stream being mitigated that's owned by the city, and the city's allowing cattle and so forth to cause problems in the stream. And we're having this paperwork violation by Menards take care of a city problem. Is that fair to say?
I'm not sure if I'd call it a city problem. I think the land use practices that are in place in this area right now are ones that are pretty common throughout eastern South Dakota.
But we're supposed to set an example.
Well, that would be good, and I think by maybe perhaps entering into this agreement with Menards and my office to take care of it, that's one of those things, again, it's a demonstration that you can do things better and still make it. And so, the unfortunate paperwork violation is going to result in benefit to the basin and to the city property.
Councilor Brown?
Greg, just a clarification. So the only thing you're asking for from city government is easement for this mitigation. It's
Correct.
not costing the city of Sioux Falls.
No, it's costing Menards about over $250,000. It's costing the city nothing. And we're still going to try to do the mitigation so the city can continue to lease the property, gain the money from the lease, but as part of those lease requirements, to get to your question, the person that leasing it needs to start doing the best management practices. So that's another thing that we're going to try to be doing on the city's behalf. We're going to pay for it and try to get that lease the way we want it.
Thank you.
Councilor Jameson?
Along with that, then, will the fences that are maintained, those be maintained by the person leasing the property, or will they be a city responsibility?
Well, we haven't crossed that bridge yet. When the city enters into the lease, we're going to pay to have the fences put in. What you do after we pay to have them put in, it's certainly possible that you can have a provision in the lease that the lessor is the person responsible for fixing and maintaining the fences.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for
Councilor
your time.
Kavanaugh?
Greg, how much of the length of Slip Up Creek is this covering? The entirety of it, or?
No, it's 4,170 feet, and as the total part of Slip Up, we had that one slide which,
I think you just went, yeah, there you go.
not a large part.
Well, the reason I ask is I'm just curious, what's the total impact if we make improvements to one section of it and leave the rest the way it is? What have we gained?
You've gained, at least on the part that we know about where there's a use, that the use is detrimental to your property, we're taking care of that use. That's a good question. What Menards can do to help you on the other areas, I don't know, but there have been discussions about, when we get this lease done, maybe that's a lease that the city should be using for all of its city-owned property. So I don't know that we can do anything other than on this piece of property, but in working with the city attorney's office and the staff, if we can help you develop a lease that binds the lessees to best management practices, we'd like to help you do that.
Mr. Gilbertson, would you like to add something to that?
That's why you've got the head microphone. There are other resources available through our office. We're working cooperatively with the city on watershed improvement activities. And certainly the portion of Slip Up Creek that's going to be affected, although a significant chunk, 4,100 feet is nothing to sneeze at, is just a small part. And there are undoubtedly other portions where improved land use practices would be appropriate. There are resources available through our office and with assistance from the city to try and make corrective measures there. This is a start in one particular spot.
Councilor Litz?
Mr. Gilbertson, hasn't reclamation and the greening of the banks along chunks of the Sioux River and other tributaries been a fairly significant chunk of the activities your office does?
We have been involved in quite a bit of these types of activities. The work along the Big Sioux River has moved along. We haven't seen the real big response in some of our water quality sampling, but on some of the smaller tributaries where this same type of activity is taking place, primarily the part where you limit the access of livestock to the streams, we've seen some fairly dramatic changes and to the better of water quality in those streams immediately downriver from those treatment sites. So there are resources available to making improvements. Other parts of Slip Up Creek and other parts of the basin. We're talking here today about what I think is really a pretty good opportunity. It's 4,170 feet of stream bank that we don't have to worry about in terms of finding resources to make the corrective action.
Thank you.
Councilor Stagers.
Yes, it was mentioned that we will have some costs involved with the fencing. How much is that going to? We're going to pay for the fencing, right?
No, we're going to pay for the initial fencing.
Yeah.
We're going to pay for everything on the first part of the mitigation. After the mitigation is completed, then the fence and the gate and the crossing and those things would be on the city's property, and after the mitigation is completed, that would then revert to the city.
Yeah, so we're going to pay for fencing, right?
Not initially.
Not initially.
Yeah.
We're going to pay for fencing.
Not
Right.
initially you're going to, and if you do it later on, that's one of those costs that I think you can pass along to a lessee if that's what you choose to do.
Okay, so we're not going to put any, the city is not going to put any fence up.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a mitigation plan that we'd be happy to provide you that's about that thick of everything that Paul's going to do. It goes from fencing and what kind of fence to seeds and what kind of seeds and weeds and how you spray weeds. When you go get this mitigation plan approved by the EPA, it's an extremely detailed process.
Do you know if any of these EPA people have actually been on site?
They haven't been on this particular site, I don't think, Paul. They have been on other sites, though, in eastern South Dakota that I've been involved in.
I was just curious, were they ever on site at Menards?
Yes,
They were? Okay.
Yes, they have been on site at Menards.
Councilor Jameson.
Following up on Kevin's question, being the city only owns a certain portion of land alongside of Slip Up Creek, is there an overall plan for the bank stabilization and erosion control along Slip Up Creek?
I'll let Jay address that.
Yes, and the plan is we'd like to see as much of it as done as possible. In the current environment, all of those improvements, however, are being done on a voluntary basis. And so what my office is working on a daily basis is trying to find willing property owners who understand that making some changes would be appropriate. We've got, as I mentioned before, there's typically cost share money available to put that new practice in place. This is, again, an opportunity where we, in effect, are looking to you as the willing landowner to participate in a program where pretty much 100% of the costs are going to be covered by somebody else. For most of our property owners up and down the river basin, we're usually looking to stick them for somewhere between 20 and 25%, so you're getting a pretty good deal here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the informative report.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, at this time, I would like to ask our Director of Finance, Jean Rowenhorst, to come forward, please, for a report on the March capital amendments.
Gene Rowenhorst, Director of Finance for the City of Sioux Falls. What you have before you is a set of slides that we're going to share with you this afternoon. A number of people will be up here. I'm going to start it off to kind of give you an overview. Twice a year, we typically come through with a group of amendments to the current year CIP. We're amending the 2008 CIP at this point. Normally, we do this in a March timeframe, something like that, and we're probably a little earlier than typically, but that it's not unusual. We'll probably be back in an August, September timeframe with another set of amendments as we learn more about the existing CIP and what's actually happening with it. So to start off with, there's been some questions. There were some questions about what the CIP program is getting spent on. You were emailed a copy that looks something like this. That's not in this package that I just handed out, but you were emailed this copy, which gives you a detail of how the CIP program breaks down, and that information comes straight out of the CIP book that we created for 2008. This first, and we're dealing here with only the sales tax portion of the CIP plan, so we are not dealing with any of the enterprise funds. We're dealing with just the sales tax piece of it. On the first slide, we have a total program of $44.5 million. You can see that the biggest user of the CIP program for 2008 is Public Works, $23.6 million. And Parks and Recreation is the next largest at 15%, $6.5 million. Now, the debt service is actually larger, but that gives you some sense of the departments and who's getting what out of the CIP program. So the next slide. I wanted to give you a little sense also this is the pie chart of the CIP debt service that we're using. And we want to give you a sense of how much the debt service went to which department. Public Works gets 62% of the CIP. If you went back on there, that was 19%. So this one pie chart represents 19% of the CIP, and 62% of this chart is debt service that is used in Public Works. Parks gets 17%, and all the other departments combined get 21%. So it gives you a sense of how the CIP breaks down and how it's being used and who it's being allocated to. Next slide. We wanted to point out to you, and the reason we're here today with some requested modifications to this 2008 CIP plan. We have $7.1 million in fund balance at the end of the year that's available. The reasons for why we have $7 million, $7.1 million. First, this is not out of bounds from where we normally end the year with the CIP. We ended as low as $4.5 million. We've ended it up over $7 million before. The last 5 years' average is $6.5 million that we ended the year with. The reason these numbers come up, we project something of a unobligated, it's not unobligated, but unidentified CIP projects at the beginning of the year, so there's always a little bit of a pool out there available for the unknowns that come up. One of the good pieces of news that we got in 2007 was that a number of our projects really came in very good shape as far as when the bids came in. They came in better than what we had in the CIP, so we have leftover balances from that. A rather significant player in contributing to the $7.1 million this year was the lower anticipated debt service, and what that came from, at the beginning of 07, when we put the 07 plan together, we had a projection or a forecast of when the SRF loans would kick in, primarily from the storm drainage project, the $40 million that we did in storm drainage improvements. And then we also had the quality of life bonds. We actually had them going on the book earlier in the year than they did, and they actually ended up going on about right at the end of December, so we had virtually no debt service or interest or anything on that. Those are the major contributors to getting us to the $7.1 million that's available at this point in time. Next slide, please. So what is being proposed is to spend, here is the $7.1 million. We have a project at the arena that most of you are aware of, the The locker rooms, improvements that we want to have done at the arena, that's primarily being done because the existing ones are not the best, and we have a rather significant basketball tournament that's scheduled to come here, and we need to have appropriate facilities for them. We've got another $500,000 on for fire out of sales tax. This is related to Fire Station 10. If I'm wrong, Don, is it 10? At any rate, the fire station on East 10th Street. We have, and Don's going to show you, we've after studying it further and doing some more work with the architects and that, it comes out that we probably is the best deal for us for the city to spend an additional $500,000 in what's in the plan. And then we have $1.9 million for parks amendments, and that is primarily to do with land that we want to do with the school districts around the city. Well, it'll be the City of Sioux Falls has 2 of them, and the City of Brandon has 2 of them that we want to have enter into one of our agreements again, where we have a joint use agreement to have community centers for these projects. So with that, I'll let the other directors, we have directors here for all of the changes, and I'll let them come up and explain their individual projects.
Councilor Kavanaugh.
Gene, I noticed when going from slide 2 to 3, you have other departments, 4%, $2,056,000. When you add OSEP and debt service, other departments goes to $9.3 million. Could you provide us
I'm
with
sorry, which slide are you looking at?
slide 2 and 3?
2, the capital program sales tax breakdown?
Yes.
Okay, which line there? What
You
number?
had other departments, $2,056,000.
Right, okay.
When you add OSEP and debt service, other department goes to $9.3 million. Could you give us a breakdown in the next couple days of how that 9.3 is made up?
Yeah, that's going to be made up of things, it's a 2.6, I think it would be OSEP, but I'll get you a reconciliation on it.
Okay, thanks.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Don Kearney with Parks and Recreation. Our first project slide talks about where we invest our capital dollars for Parks and Recreation. Out of all the projects that we have in the 2008 CIP, 83% of those go into existing parks, and 17% of those go for new construction on new park and recreation facilities. Next slide. Our first amendment for the March amendments is our Falls Park Master Plan. This amendment would authorize us to use $16,000 in donated funds from the Excel Foundation to update our master plan at Falls Park. We'd like to update the master plan that was completed several years ago. Since that time, there have been some new developments that will impact the park, one of those being the railroad relocation project, the adjacent development of Uptown at the Falls to the west of what we call Falls West, and then just the overall demand that we've seen for parking in the park. There's just a lot of activity going on down there, and so we see the need to expand that. And then obviously sculptures being placed in the park is an important amenity that we want to make sure that that is planned and available space for those to be placed in the park. And so that is our initial CIP amendment, and I would also note that there are no grant funds associated, or matching funds associated with that particular grant. With that, I'd take questions on the Falls Park Master Plan update.
Councilor Stagers.
Yes, Don, can you tell us what's going on with the farmers market?
Farmers Market Pavilion that we've been working on for the last 6 or 9 months now. We've been trying to find a suitable location to site that. The plan was to put it adjacent to where the old maintenance building used to be that we shared with the street department. And when we conducted soil borings in that location, we hit trash and rubble. And so we're trying to find a suitable site so that we don't have problems with that in the future. Obviously, it's not an insurmountable task to find a suitable location there, but what we're trying to do is try to minimize the impact that the trash in that location might have. I understand it's throughout the entire area down there, even when we built some of the other improvements on the south side of the road there. So we're still working on that. Obviously, we'd like to be further along than we are right now, but that is one of the holdups.
What's the projected time frame for doing that?
We'd hoped to have it up last fall, actually, and we're still working with our consultant and our engineering staff in-house to try to keep that ball rolling and hopefully get it constructed this summer.
Would there be any other questions regarding the Parks Amendment? Thank you very much, Mr. Kearney.
Okay, then the other amendments that we have are the 4 new school park sites that we wanted to talk about for the acquisition and initial site development. We've prepared a presentation that really speaks to all 4 sites, even though that we'll only have 3 items or 3 sites that will show up as individual projects in the CIP amendment resolution. I do also want to mention that we have representatives of the Brandon School District and the Sioux Falls School District, Dave Propone from Brandon and Jeff Kreider from Sioux Falls School District, in case there are questions of them. Next, okay, that's fine. Back up, please. All right. We have a long history of cooperation with the Sioux Falls School District, as well as now the Harrisburg School District. Currently, there are 16 school park partnerships that we have out there. We have 5 school park sites that have community centers. We have 1 school park site with an enlarged gymnasium at John Harris. We have 2 enlarged gymnasiums at Terry Redlin and Laurel Wilder. We have 8 school park sites without community centers or enlarged gyms. And of those 16 sites, 14 are in Sioux Falls and 2 are in Harrisburg. Next slide. These are our partnering facilities that we have throughout the community. And the legend beside them and the items in parentheses are CC stands for Community Center, PS stands for Park School Site, obviously G represents gym, and then would also note that Journey and Explorer on the bottom right-hand column are the 2 Harrisburg sites that we currently have in place.
Councilor Litz has a question for you.
Yes, Don, I have a question about the 2 sites that are in the older part of town. One of them would be the Lincoln, where the previous elementary site is, and the other one would be Emerson. It says Park School, and the school has gone off Emerson. It's a park right now. Is that correct?
Right.
Does the school still own the property on Emerson?
I believe we own the school, the property at Emerson, but the school district still owns the property at Lincoln. They've just essentially cleared the site, and we've made it available for open play.
So I noticed city employees mowing it and such. They're doing the erosion control and snow removal and stuff. So it's just it is available as just a general open area for a ball game or something that anybody would want to do. Are there any plans for improvements? Has the school board indicated anything to you that what might be the future use of this land?
Not that I'm aware of. They're just holding on to it at this time.
Okay, thank you, Don.
Councilor Costello has a question.
Don, can you explain to me, I've been in the community centers, and they include a gym and meeting rooms and activity rooms, computer rooms and such. And in like Laurel Wilder, where it's just a gym, what's our most schools have gyms that I'm aware of. What's special about that?
And Barb can correct me if I'm wrong, but the general philosophy of those was to add some enlarged gyms so that it could accommodate our league play. The standard-sized gym wasn't big enough to accommodate our uses that we needed there, and so that is the difference.
Thanks.
Councilor Brown.
I want to go back to what Councilor Litz was talking about, specifically with the Lincoln site that's now open, not too far from the Pettigrew Heights area. Any opportunities there for affordable housing projects or anything long-term that we're looking at?
I don't know. I defer to Jeff, I guess, but unless you have anything, Jeff, to add, nothing planned. So.
Okay.
But I think those ideas like that are certainly on the table, and we've talked about how we could possibly use that to enhance that neighborhood. So I think they're certainly open to new ideas there. Okay. All right. One of the things that I think is important to note that we wanted to talk to you about was why are we doing these school parks? Why is it important? And I would note that it does comply with our 2015 Growth Management Plan. And we took an excerpt out of that plan where it states that it's important to coordinate school impacts associated with future school development with the Sioux Falls School District and other adjacent school districts to continue the policy of cooperative school park land acquisition
and construction in new residential areas, because we certainly everybody understands how once you put a school in, how the houses seem to pop up right away. So it certainly does have an impact, and it needs to be well coordinated. Some of the benefits of working together with the school districts are that they provide one large contiguous site that otherwise we'd have to do individually if we decided to do separate sites. Obviously, it's there available for the school district for PE, for recess, but it's also available for general community use like practices, community functions and events, and obviously our recreation programs that we have throughout the city. And the other thing I'd mention too, that it allows us to share in the development and maintenance costs for things like playgrounds, parking, community center, and gym space, site development costs. One of the things that's nice for the school district is during the day when we have a community center attached to the elementary school, they can use it for their overflow programs. A lot of times we'll find that they like to use our community center side for things that get a little messy, and that they can have some room to spread out to do with their arts and crafts that may not do so well in the classroom setting where they have all their other materials. So it works out well from that perspective, and then obviously the trade-off back and forth between the school district and our community centers for space also goes both ways there, I guess. The other thing I'd mention is, and just show you, is our 2035 growth map that we have. The circles represent schools and parks that we anticipate. The 2035 plan is currently being drafted as we speak, and I know Jeff and the planning department are hosting public meetings. And obviously, these are proposed locations and projected locations, but obviously, as development occurs, they do have a tendency to slide back and forth and are not necessarily going to be in these exact locations. Next slide. The 2015 growth plan identified 9 new school park sites, which of 3 are now open or under construction. We opened, Harrisburg opened the Explorer Elementary School in 2005. Sioux Falls opened Rosa Park in 2007, and then Journey in Harrisburg is scheduled to be open this fall. There are 4 more projected to be open between 2009 and 2012. 2 of those sites are in Brandon and 2 are in Sioux Falls. And obviously, they are the 4 sites that we are talking about with regard to the amendment before you. 2 more are also projected in between 2012 and 2015, 1 in Harrisburg and then additional 1 in Brandon. So you might ask, why all 4 at once? Steady growth, obviously, on 3 sides of the community does impact that. City limits continue to overlap in non-Sioux Falls school districts, and then Sioux Falls and Brandon school districts this last quarter of 2007 did identify land for current and future needs. The proposed CIP amendment that we're here to talk to you about tonight are for 2 Sioux Falls School District elementary schools and 2 Brandon elementary schools. The 2 in Sioux Falls are generally located at Marion and Maple, and 1 generally located at 57th and TLS Road. And the other 2 are in Brandon School District, 1 generally located at 10th Street and 6 Mile Road, and the other at 41st and 6 Mile Road. The next slide shows the Marion and Maple site. We're just west of Marion and south of Maple. Would also note that the fire department does plan to site a future fire station at the location, and will also be acquiring land from the school district for that purpose. The next slide shows the 57th and TLS Road site. Actually, the site is on West 53rd Street and South Klein Avenue on the north-south street. And that is a proposed site plan for that particular site that you see there. The next slide shows the 10th Street and 6 Mile Road site. That is the site plan for that road to a large degree. And that is one of the Brandon, the newest proposed Brandon Elementary School. This site also happens to be a community center site that we've identified based on the spatial arrangement of community centers throughout the city of Sioux Falls. And then this school is also scheduled to open in the fall of 2009. The 41st Street and 6 Mile Road site is the second Brandon Elementary and is not projected to open for a few more years. And then again, as with all these sites that we have, both the Marion and Maple and the southeast site, we're calling 41st and 6 Mile Road. the growth in those areas and the population and the children in those areas are certainly going to drive when that happens, but we do anticipate that that'll be a few years before that happens. Next slide, please. So what are the costs? Marion and Maple site, we anticipate that we'd acquire 7 acres in the amount of $350,000. And then in this particular situation, because we have time to budget for the site development costs, we would do that as part of our regular CIP. And then the other thing I want to mention as we go through these different costs for each of these sites is that when we talk about site development, we're talking about what it takes to grade and seed the park and install the sidewalk so that the park is functionable and usable. We also plan to plant trees as part of that because we all know how long it takes to get trees up and growing. And so we do some initial site development with the school district so that when we come in later through our CIP process and actually build the shelters and the playgrounds and those types of things, that we have a good start and it doesn't need to be regraded to accommodate that. So the total cost for this Marion Road and Maple site, which the school district has acquired, is $350,000. The next slide.
Councilor Stagers,
Yeah.
or excuse me, Councilor Costello.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Don, the initial site development cost is 2011. Do you know what the dollar value is for that?
Yeah, I think I have that somewhere here. Basically what we, I don't know if I have that, can get that to you right away, Mr. Costello. Basically what we did is we took the site at Dolly school site and identified that dollar amount, and then we just proportionately increased it based on the number of acres. But if you give me a second, I might be able to pull that up. Yeah, we're looking at about $220,000. That includes a 10% contingency that we'd budget in the future.
Okay, thank you. And that, again, that's just to get grading and whatever, not any development of a park. That's
Right,
just site.
right. Other than the trees would be the only maybe exception to that. Yeah, and the key there is that the kids need to get to and from, and they need sidewalks, and so we go ahead and put the sidewalks in so they have accessible routes to the school. The 57th and TLS Road site then, this is an area where we anticipate acquiring about 8 acres at this location. This cost estimate has an asterisk by the site development piece. When we originally presented this to our CIP committee, and some of you were there at that CIP committee meeting, we did the estimate based on the Public Works Department installing the street and then them seeking reimbursement from the school district for their share of the street and the developer. But in this case, the school district actually will be purchasing the site, and they will actually, as part of the condition of the purchase, is that the developer will install the streets. So the tables have somewhat turned, so to speak, because we'll actually be reimbursing the school district instead of them reimbursing us for that. And so I would ask that we sit down with the school district to identify that cost and then come back to the CIP committee this Thursday where we'll have another meeting, and then at your Monday meeting, informational meeting on March 3rd, that we'd come back to you with an updated cost estimate for this site.
Councilor Costello?
Don, on both of these, in the Brandon ones as well, the original one, or Marion Road, is 7 acres. This is 8 acres. That'll be all park ground.
Yes. In the case of the Marion and Maple, Don Hill, the fire department, would also acquire some additional land, and so that's why we're taking 7. He'll probably take, 1.5 to 3 probably acres for the fire station site itself.
So the school board their land is in addition to these 7 and 8 acres.
Yes. Yeah. We try to look for a 20-acre site in total, and then we try to only pay and purchase and pay our proportionate costs based on the actual acreage we plan on owning. and the school district is fine with that.
Councillor Stagers.
Yes, Don, you mentioned that on the 57th and T. Ellis Road, we're going to be putting in the sidewalks.
Yes.
Is that right?
The school district will actually do that as part of their contract, and then we will reimburse them for the actual square footage cost of doing that based on bids that they receive.
Do we ever have the schools paying for sidewalks that they're adjacent to? Or?
Yeah, they will pay for their sidewalks, we will pay for ours.
Okay.
All right. So we would like to apologize for that error in that we had done it both ways with us putting the street in and then it got mixed up, so I apologize for that. But with regard to this site at 57th and TLS Road, construction is scheduled to begin in 2008 and then open up for kids in 2009. The 10th Street and 6 Mile Road site, the Land Act, this is a bit different in that it involves the city paying the school district for 16.5 acres on the condition that Brandon School District would acquire the land at the 41st Street and 6 Mile Road site. So with this purchase, we would have secured land not only for the 10th Street and 6 Mile Road site, but also for the 41st Street site, and obviously the reason for the increased costs for the land acquisition. The other piece of that is that I mentioned that this is a community center site that we've identified, and as part of their consideration for the land acquisition, expanding their community center, the Brandon School District has agreed to do that, so that, again, would accommodate our league play. We'd be able to have 3 volleyball courts in there or 2 basketball courts that would accommodate our league play, which essentially results in about 3,000 square feet of gym space. And so the total land purchase, as we're going to be calculating it, is $930,500 when you include the cost to add the square footage of the gym space. And then the site development is $243,000 for a total of $1.174 million. And the other thing I'd mention too is that this school is scheduled for construction this summer and would open for use in the fall of 2009. So are there any questions about that? I know that's a little different, but...
Councilor Costello.
Okay, so the total land purchase is going to be 16.5 acres. Of that, how much will we ultimately own?
We are estimating that we would own 8.25 acres at both sites in the Brandon School District on the 2 that we've identified. And I might also mention, I'll get to that at that next site, but we do have plans for acquiring that and do have talked to the owner, and they are willing to sell that property, and that's been agreed to verbally at least, that'll happen.
So excuse me, Don.
Yeah.
Councilor Kavanaugh.
So Don, the 16.5 acres is actually 10th Street and 41st combined?
Well, initially, it'll be just 10th Street, but in the end, what we'll have is a memorandum of understanding with the Brandon School District that says, we're going to buy this up front at this particular site, but that you would buy the entire site at the 41st Street site and then deed back to us 8.25 acres so that in the end, when they buy the other site, we'll have 8.25 acres at both sites, but we're paying for it all up front at this location.
So the remaining 8.25 then at the 10th Street site would be school property?
Yeah, and it'd actually be a little bit more than that because it'll be a 20-acre site again that they currently own, and so we'll own 8.25 of the 20.
Councilor Costello.
Why are we doing it that way?
I think the primary reason is that we wanted to move forward on the land acquisition on this particular site because Brandon currently owns this site. And
which site?
The 10th Street site.
The Brandon School District owns
The 10th Street site.
the 16.5 acres.
They actually own 20 acres at that location.
Well, why are we buying their 8.25 acres for their school?
Because we would ultimately own 8.25 at each location as a part of our agreement with them.
Why don't we buy 8.25 now and 8 1/4 whenever that deal gets worked out.
Excuse me a second.
We have a good answer for this, but we just can't remember why.
Great.
But I will get that for you. I know we talked about it, but none of us can remember it because we're getting all these different school sites mixed up a little bit. But we'll get that for you.
Let me move on to another one.
Okay, thank you.
On 41st Street and 6 Mile Road,
Yeah.
in 2012, we've got the site development. Do we know what that dollar value is?
Yeah, I don't want to get that for you. We estimated at $180,000.
Are we, if I may continue,
It's
are
fine.
we obligated to buy this ground? My understanding is that like the Sioux Falls School District has already bought the ground.
The Sioux Falls School District has already bought the ground at the Marion and Maple site. And we would, in all these transactions, we would always be buying the land from the school district and not the, well, obviously they own it at, the Brandon School District owns the 10th Street site, and they own the Marion, and the Sioux Falls School District owns the Marion and Maple site.
What if we decide we have a higher priority than this?
Within the CIP, then you could choose not to purchase them.
But the Sioux Falls School District has already purchased the land.
They would probably sell the balance off, I would imagine.
We don't have any agreements to purchase the land, verbal or written or otherwise?
Well, other than, we've done this 16 other times throughout the course of our relationship with the school districts, and obviously, we anticipated that we would continue to provide school park sites as we have in the past. And so, obviously, your action by approving the CIP amendments allows us to do that. And so, obviously, if you choose not to, we're not able to go forward. And as you might probably understand, Brandon and Sioux Falls obviously would like to know whether we're participating in these site acquisitions for schools and parks. And so, and they've got some that are actually starting to go out to bid here shortly. So it's important for them to know, and that's obviously why we're before you.
Councilor Kavanaugh.
Don, I assume that the prices you list here for land acquisition, are they based on what the various school districts paid for them?
Normally, that's how we've done it. The school district has purchased the one in the northwest side at Marion and Maple, and we intend to pay what they paid for the purchase price. And it's a little different in the northeast site where Brandon had received a gift of that land.
I was just going to ask, does that somehow factor into this? I mean, is there a situation where the Brandon School District got land donated to them and then they turn around and sell donated land to the city?
Yeah, we've talked about that, and we're trying to figure out what we would do if the shoe was on the other foot. And, I think typically we would plan to sell it. If we owned the land, we'd probably sell it back to the school district. And I think we've all agreed that, at least conceptually, that the price is a reasonable price for land in that area of, $35,000 an acre. Other questions about those? To carry on to the next item, 41st Street and 6 Mile Road, it kind of illustrates that what we've been talking about already, that Brandon would acquire those additional acres, the 20-acre site in the southeast part of town at 41st and 6 Mile, and then they would deed back to us 8 acres, 8 1/4 acres for a park site. And then, again, we would budget for the initial site development in 2012, or when we felt or had a little better idea of when they were going to proceed with the construction on that school site. Next slide, please. So in summary, we're talking about $1.942 million CIP amendment, and mentioned that the 57th and TLS Road site, again, we anticipated that it was going to be in the Public Works CIP in order to build that road, and they were reimbursing us. And so now it's more of a where the funds are paid out of, and we instead would be reimbursing the school district for the street improvements in that location. And again, we'd bring back that to the CIP committee, and if we can get a few minutes on your Monday informational, we'll provide that information along with the other good reason we have for structuring it that way. The other thing I'd mention is that how we will reimburse. The school district would bid all the work with the school construction. The city would pay their proportionate share of costs based on how much land we owned. The city would reimburse based on actual bids received. And then again, the CIP amendment is an estimate of those costs. It's our best estimate. A lot of these plans are just coming out to bid, and so we've certainly done our best to try to estimate those. And since they are estimates, we did try to include a 10% contingency where we knew there's some potential for those prices to go up or down. And then finally, as I mentioned, the MOU, we're working on an MOU. We're very close to having that completed with Brandon. And then we're also working on updating our use agreements with the Sioux Falls School District to spell out the intentions of both parties on these 4 sites. And then one of the other things that some of the new council members may not be aware of is that we currently have a joint usage agreement with the Sioux Falls School District, and we also have one with the Harrisburg School District. And what those allow for is amendments to those agreements to add additional sites as they come on. And then one final note that those agreements also spell out who takes care of what how our facilities programmed and scheduled, and how all those things work. And so those are all spelled out in those agreements too, and you'll see those come forward as well.
Councilor Brown.
Don, remind me of the numbers of usage in community centers. You've given those to us before, but I don't recall those off the top of my head.
Yeah, in 2006 we had a little over 250,000 people go through the community centers at those sites.
And what's bringing them through there? What kind of programming is done?
Well, a lot of it has to do. We just had family night out at Morningside Community Center, and Barb told me that we had over 900 children at that particular family night out. So that's one example. But we have our after-school programs and open gyms, game rooms, computer labs. We also have study areas for the kids and quiet rooms. But we also have the 100-plus basketball teams throughout the city that use those community centers. And then we also have meeting rooms available for the general public to use, and also the 200 volleyball teams that we also program through there. And if you'll remember, I think I might have mentioned it recently, is that the gym space is always a premium. People are always after more gym space, and here recently we've had to work with the school district, and luckily they've been such a good partner with us that we've had to start to use a middle school to accommodate the number of teams that we have in our leagues. And so it's important that we continue to add the gymnasiums along with the growth in the community. So,
and then if I may follow up too, how does this help us achieve the goal of having parks within a half mile?
I kind of like to use the school park sites as our backbone for trying to achieve that goal of having a park within a half mile of every residence. It certainly does give us the best bang for our buck, in my opinion. It gives us a large site that really accommodates a lot of teams. I gave the CIP the example the other day where I believe I counted 11 different soccer teams using one of the school park sites the other day, or last fall actually. And so it really is provides a lot of space. It has parking. And so I believe these sites provide the backbone for our park system. And then as new neighborhoods come in adjacent to these areas and these neighborhoods, that we're able to fill in with smaller neighborhood-type parks to try to meet that goal of a park within a half mile of every resident.
Is there any other programming in parks that draws those kind of numbers that you track?
Well, certainly our regional sports complexes draw a lot of numbers to those. Our annual report, I think, showed over 2 million participants at all of our parks and recreation facilities, not only our parks as you think of them, but our partner facilities, Great Bear, the zoo, the stadium, all those other third-party contractors we have out there in those facilities.
Councilor Costello.
Don, kind of follow up with Vernon's question. Can you provide us a map on the 2035 growth map? You've got the various parks and a circle around them, and I don't know what radius that is, if that's a mile or the half mile or whatever, but can you provide us a map of the 4 proposed and then maybe identify the closest existing parks or
Sure.
other proposed parks to that?
You bet.
And then I'm just wondering, as a looking down the road, and we know we're going to struggle with our CIP, some of these projects aren't for some years down the road. And I'm wondering if we can't strike a deal with some of these school districts and/or landowners on getting an option to buy the ground and not necessarily having to come up with the cash today. Like one of them, I think, was 2012.
Mm-hmm.
We can buy an option or get an option now to buy it in 2012 to help us with the cash flow.
Okay.
Councilor Stakers.
Yes, Don, we're planning to have another community center. Can you tell us right now with the community centers that we have, how much are we spending in operating costs each year for all these centers?
The utilities I know off the top of my head, they're about $60,000 a year per community center.
Per community center?
And the staffing number I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah. Next time you talk to us, can you give us the total operating costs on all of the community centers?
Sure.
Be great.
You bet.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Don, and thank you for everything you do for our city.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
If I may. Councilman Stagers, if you'd go back and consult the monthly financial reports, the program budgeting section of that for the year is there, and and the community centers is one of the programs of parks.
Do you know what that is, by any chance?
No, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's there. So that'd be
yeah.
the best place to find it.
Well, thank you very much for that.
Second thing, I'd have to apologize to the council and to Councilman Kavanaugh in particular. It would help considerably if I knew how to read the charts. I'll give you a correct story on it. If you look at the two charts, they're both $44,536,000. And what we did is we took the debt service and OSEP and allocate and put that back into parks, other departments, and public works, and then it changed the chart, changed the percentages.
Yes,
So
and if I could,
when I
Madam
said
Chair.
it was 19% or 18%
Yeah.
of the
I knew what you were saying. It brought to mind the question, if without OSEP and debt service, other departments represented 4% or $2,056,000 of that second penny, and then it went to 9.3 or 21%. That difference that's what I wanted to see, some type
Okay,
of
we'll get,
of
the change, it's debt service, a lot of it, not so much OSEP, but we get to the breakdown of
Yes,
that.
and if it's mostly debt service, then what department?
Yep, okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Our amendment is for the fire station on East 10th Street, which is Fire Station 5.
Excuse me, will you just introduce yourself
I'm sorry.
for the listening public, please?
I'm Don Hill, Fire Chief of Sioux Falls.
Thank you.
Our amendment is the East 10th Street Fire Station, and I'd just like to refer you to the original capital improvements project, which is on page 49 of your book, if you get an opportunity to look at it. It was to remodel and make an addition to the fire station that was there, to add a third apparatus bay, and to put on an exterior, permanent exterior finish, which was to be brick. As the design went forward, it was discovered that there were enough structural concerns that the third bay was not feasible due to the fact that the east wall of the apparatus floor would have to be substantially removed and was not capable then of supporting the rest of the structure. And so the department at that time went ahead with design to see what could be done for that fire station. And another thing that could not be supported between the combination of the foundation and the existing walls was a brick exterior finish. The walls are block walls, and between the foundation that's there and the load that would be on the block walls to hold the brick veneer, the structure was not capable of doing that. So this is the structure that is there now on East 10th Street. And the next one, this is a rendering, an architect's rendering of the design that was in progress. And if you take a look at that design, or the exterior of that was metal, like a metal farm building with exposed fasteners on the outside, and in addition on the back of the building. And the total square feet was between 6,100 and 6,300. There were a couple of designs that were done, and then so what we would have ended up there is a two-bay station that did not meet our needs, and we've been unhappy with on the day we moved in, with a metal exterior for the cost that was in the budget. Next slide. And Fire Station 10 we constructed a couple of years ago, and that is 7,800 square feet, so it's roughly 1,500 square feet bigger than what the proposed remodel was on East 10th Street. And our intent would be, if the amendment is approved, would be to construct a station similar to Fire Station 10 with minimal changes. We recently had built Fire Station 4, modified it slightly to build Fire Station 10, and I went out to the crews that are stationed at Station 10 and said, okay, if you could change anything in this fire station to make your lives easier and make it so that you can operate more efficiently, what would you do? And it came down to, well, I think we would move these outlets, and also I might move this door about 4 feet. So the station that we have on West 12th Street, Fire Station 10, functions very well, and our intent would be to build something very similar on this site. Any questions?
Councilor Jameson.
Don, I think when we repurchased that building, I thought one of the reasons we repurchased it was the fact that we could put a station back in there less expensively than building a new one.
We did, and we had an engineer look at that site to see if these things could be done, if it would support a brick exterior. And at that time, we got feedback that it could do it. But as the department got into actual design, it was discovered by the architects that was not possible.
Is there a better location than that one, then, if we're going to have to build a new station?
That location is a good location because of a couple of things that we looked at. The response time for that area of town is in the built-up city. It's long there, and the population density is high. So it is a good location for the station. And we had at the time looked at a number of other locations and chose this station partially because we could remodel the structure that was there, but not exclusively for that reason. There's I don't know if you can remember, but there's kind of an hourglass-shaped area of the city there, right at that kind of meets at that area, the center of which is at the 10th and Chicago area, that we will never be able to meet our response time goals of 5 minutes unless we add a station. And that's actually, the station in this location takes care of nearly all of those east side response areas that would be over 5 minutes.
Councilor Brown.
Chief, help me understand why we need 3 bays instead of the 2 bays that exist currently.
Sure. Part of the reason is because of the change in the fire department's mission after 9/11. We have geared up to be able to respond to terrorist events, and as a result, also hazardous materials calls, not only in Sioux Falls, but in the surrounding area. So we actually have quite a few more vehicles that were purchased with grant dollars to respond to these kind of things. And almost all of our stations have multiple missions. What I mean by that is they don't only respond to fires, but they specialize in another area, such as rescue or hazardous materials response. We actually have 4 hazardous materials response units that are, and all of the technicians that are trained to use those. So every station needs, and you don't have a separate crew for all of those things. They're cross-staffed with the crew that's there. So that's why we need the additional base.
Councilor Costello.
Don, I'm still not quite sure that I understand that. I mean, as recently as last year, we were on a, this project was okay with 2 bays, and now we need 3. The metal, I mean, obviously, station number 10, brick facing looks so much better. Whether it's metal or brick, I'm not sure that I'm really that concerned about. What I am concerned about is 2 bays, 3 bays.
Right.
And what's, we've got more equipment, but it seemed like it was okay, and I know maybe it was your predecessor's train of thought. I mean, what else has changed?
The project is in the capital improvements plan for 3 bays. But when it was discovered that the station could not accommodate another bay without significant overhaul, a decision was made to go ahead to explore the possibility of building whatever you could with the funds that were available in the capital program. So the project itself says that it will be a 3-bay station.
Okay, so it's in as a 3-bay station, but we can't get a 3-bay station for the number that's in our CIP. Is that what you're telling me?
That's correct.
Councilor Kavanaugh.
Donna, back to the 3-bay business, and I'm not questioning the logic of having 3 bays, but given the circumstances here, Central to the west, and I don't imagine there's much space there, Sycamore to the east, I know we're expanding Sycamore, aren't we?
That's correct.
Can't we get by with 2 bays in this one location?
I don't think that it would be a very wise thing to do. We have, currently we have in some of our stations, we have apparatus parked behind each other. And so I think that this bay would not be, or when we build this station, we will not have an empty bay at the station. It will be used.
Councilor Litz.
Don, I'm looking at the water tower there, and I think Burger Time is next door to it. I'm looking at this building and stuff. As opposed to the new one, do you actually have the physical space to put this up, or will the building be turned sideways, or does the water tower come out and that property play into this? How's that going to work?
The water tower is coming out, and you can't see it from this photo, but it's built up in the back, and Public Works is going to be removing that fill. That was actually fill that was put in, and they will be reusing that fill. And so we have an L-shaped piece of property there, and there is sufficient space.
Very good. Would there be any changes to the traffic lights to let you out during times of emergency? Would there be a light installed there, or any such activity?
I don't think that would be necessary. We haven't, the only place where we have done that is at 41st and Marion, and there's a control for it there. With the nearest stoplight is just a little over a block away there on Jessica, and I don't anticipate that we'd have any trouble getting out of that station.
Very good. Thanks, Don.
Seeing no other questions, thank you very much, Fire Chief.
Good evening, Mike Cooper. I think it is, yeah, it is officially evening. Okay. Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. Our department is the liaison with the next two items, which will be the arena as well as the convention center. The arena, we are requesting an amendment to the CIP to add a new project, which will be to make changes to the locker rooms as well as the officials' locker rooms in the existing arena. And the total amount of the requested amendment is just over $411,000. Russ DeCurtins is here today representing SMG, our arena management group. Russ has been very involved with the Summit League going back last year when they made the initial bid for the basketball tournament, which will be held in the future, as well as working with our architect, Miller Sellers Hero, on an overall 7-year capital program for the arena facility. A couple things that Russ is going to get up here and talk to you about is the scope of the project that we're showing you has been expanded from what we were talking about last year. We're now asking for additional money to add the officials' locker room, which with engineering would be another $116,000 estimate at this point. So we have some pictures that Russ would like to walk through with you quickly to talk about a better explanation on the scope of the project, why do we need to do this, and why are we asking you to add additional funding to do actually 2 projects this year as opposed to just the locker room renovation. So Russ, why don't you go ahead and go through your photos.
Good evening. Russ DeCurtins, SMG Facility Management. The pictures that you're seeing, the one on the left is the example of what the locker rooms, 2 of the locker room spaces are. Those may not be the original hooks and shelves from 1960, but it isn't much of a locker room. All they are is a place for the players and to hang their clothing on. The picture on the right is the shower room, which that represents 2 shower trees, 2 different locker rooms using the same space. As you can see, there's nothing in between those 2. The project, as identified by Miller, Sellers, and Hero, would change the locker rooms to accommodate not only the Summit League, but our resident sports teams as well, and give them better accommodations and some more space. The next set of pictures just gives you an idea of what the restroom facility looks like. It's not ADA accessible, and it's not very modern. The picture on the right shows you a very long corridor that also inhibits wheelchair traffic into the locker rooms because it's not ADA compliant. And you can kind of see what modern lockers look like on the right, far right side of that picture, but that was the purpose of that picture, was to show you the corridor. The next set of pictures is the officials' locker room. This is one very small room that generally was designed to accommodate 2 male officials back in the 1960s, because that's all that ever officiated games at the arena in 1960. Very, very sparse. And the purpose that, the reason that we're adding the officials' locker rooms into this project now is because for the Summit League tournaments in 2009 and 2010, we are being allowed graciously to use the convention center's locker room space for that tournament. But in the meantime, we realized that our resident sports teams more often than not not only do they have 3 officials now for many of the events in the football. I don't know, Bob, how many you got? You have 3 or 4 out there on the field for football. But they're both male and female officials now, and this is the only space that we have for them right now. As well as for the Summit League and any college tournaments that we hope to attract in the future, and we get the men's and women's teams together, we'll have men's and women's officials as well. So we changed gears a little bit on this to add this into the project so that we can make it appropriate for not only the Summit League, but for our resident sports teams. The last picture, it's really hard to tell, and one of the reasons I wanted this included was that small doorway is actually the shower, and you can't see it, but at the base of that doorway is a 4-inch curb that you step over to get into the shower. And obviously, that's the way all of the shower rooms were designed back in the 60s for this building. And you can't possibly get a wheelchair or a handicapped person into there. And we will have, maybe not for officials, but for participants, there will be times where we'll need that. So a big part of this project is to make the spaces ADA compliant.
Councilor Stagers has a question for you.
Yes, sir. Russ, I understand there was going to be a private-public partnership here in building this. Now it's just totally public. What happened?
Well, that's a really good question, Kermit. The private contributions were offered. The Sports Authority has spent a powerful amount of money to get this tournament and will work on other tournaments in the future. This improvement is to a city facility that will get so much more use out of than just one tournament a year, that the decision really should be that this is a city project.
But, if some private entities want to give us the money, why wouldn't we take it?
Well, that's entirely up to you. The offer was made,
then.
but I think again, this is a city-owned facility, and the improvements going forward benefit so much more than just the Sports Authority.
Could Mike maybe answer, why aren't we taking private money?
I believe going back last fall, when there was discussions about this project, initially the cost was estimated to be we had thrown out a figure, and I think there was discussion, as I remember, about potential private funding. I'm not sure that there was actually an actual offer or commitment made, but during the discussion, I remember with the council, as Russ said, this is a city-owned facility, and it was my understanding during those discussions that the commitment was made that we should be putting the city money into it. And Councilor Knutson, maybe that was your recollection as well.
I very much have the same recollection as you do and as Russ Curtins does on this. And again, as a city councilor and a member of the Sioux Falls Sports Authority, this topic has been discussed really for quite a few months. And I believe, just informally, that city councilors have been visited with on this topic. And so obviously we are the final decision makers on that. So we can always change our minds if that is the good decision.
That's why we have votes.
I
would also say...
excuse me, Mike. Councilor Costello.
Let him finish.
I was just going to make one additional comment that when we presented the overall architectural building analysis, which was about a $7 million list of projects, the locker rooms were identified to be done in 2008 with a cost estimate of $295. And then the officials' room was identified as part of a 2009 project. And so again, what we're asking today is, or what we'll be asking Monday night, is to not only include the locker room, but to move up the officials' room from 09 into 08 and get that all done as one project.
Councilor Costello?
On that point, Mike, on the 7-year capital improvement that we have here is not reflected in our CIP. This came after we had done our CIP.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
And I don't particularly see the officials' locker room in here, but I assume it's within one of these categories.
It's the line item right below locker rooms. It says media.
Media officials, okay.
That's a $200,000 line item.
Okay.
We'll be taking about half of that.
Okay. What are we going to do for the other $6.8 million or whatever? What is our plan with that facility?
We are currently working with the Arena Convention and Entertainment Board, as well as we'll be working with the council to try to make that determination, because, as you know, all of this is proposed right now to be funded out of the sales tax program. So
are we going to be implementing this in our CIP for 09?
We will be putting together some recommendations for the 2009 through 2013 CIP.
In certainly these two locker rooms, but with all these costs, this is what has been identified that what we need to carry us through the future for the arena. In other words, we're not going to be back in 5 years saying we have to expand locker rooms again. I mean, this is long-term stuff, right?
Yes, that was the purpose of going through this exercise, is to try to identify as best we can what the needs are going to be out in the next 5 to 7 years. And we've done the same thing with the pavilion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both very much.
I'll just stay up here and we'll move right on to the convention center. The thing to keep in mind as we talk about the convention center is that we're now switching to the entertainment tax funding as opposed to sales tax funding. So we need to make sure that we make that distinction. The slide that is up on the screen now shows you when we presented to you the 2008 budget request for the convention center. And we were just now getting underway with a new management team, Global Spectrum, along with the CVB. This is the budget that was approved for 2008, which includes money for the operating contract, the parking lot and area maintenance, insurance and drainage costs, the CVB long-term booking, and then we had a line item of $100,000 shown for capital outlay. And so one of the amendments that we'll be talking to you about on the next slide will be a request to change the projects that were identified in that $100,000 capital outlay of sales tax. Let's just go back to the previous slide real quick. Sorry. And then the second item that we'll be talking to you about tonight is that when we presented this budget, we had also said that we were going to be forecasting the potential for another $100,000 of entertainment tax for deferred maintenance items. But because we were working with a brand-new manager, we wanted to give them time to get into the facility and work with it and then present a recommendation later on in 2008 of what that appropriation will be for. So the second part of the convention center request will be to ask you to appropriate that additional $100,000 of entertainment tax for specified maintenance projects. And if we can push to the next slide. Scott Kavanaugh is probably right behind me. Again, representing Global Spectrum, our management team that has now been in the facility for some months. And Scott would like to go through with you the amendment of the $100,000 that was identified as OSEP, as well as the additional $100,000 that we're asking you to appropriate for deferred maintenance. Scott, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mike. Scott Kavanaugh, Global Spectrum. What we've got on this first slide is the original items that were proposed before we came. What we've come in and identified, our first couple of tasks that we're going to have to take care of is we've got a beautiful terrazzo floor in there, and we need a scrubber to maintain that floor. The scrubber we have now is it's on its last legs, and so we've identified that as a little more of a priority as opposed to an ID or payroll system. We still have an accountant. We can figure. We've got a couple of abacuses. I think we can get through the payroll system, but we do need to take care of that. Also, we need a network in the convention center right now. We don't have a network. Our network consists of a thumb drive that we pass around, and as you can about imagine, that's a little frustrating, and it scares me to death. Accuracy of reports and some of the other things that we're dealing with. That is indeed a huge priority for us. And lastly, on there is a portable dance floor. We spent, I want to say, at least $23,000 in rental of dance floor last year, and that's a no-brainer for us because we will recoup that cost very shortly for that dance floor. We have dance floors already. This is addition to what we already have, but there are times when you have, I believe from when we took over in July 1st through the end of the year, there were 73 weddings and receptions. Everybody wants a dance floor, so you have a higher quality dance floor, a little better than what we've been able to rent at this point, plus it's something that we can save some cost. Yeah, that's, wait, let's go back. I'm sorry. Are there any questions on any of those items?
Yeah, Scott?
Yeah.
I have a question. What's the identification system? What is that?
I believe that what that was, Kermit, again, that was pre-us.
Yes, uh-huh.
I think what that was an ID badge system where you could swipe in and out, a time management system. It's something that we are currently looking at. I think we can do it for substantially less than that. That's something we'll come back with in the future, but right now, that's not nearly as big a priority as these other items. Yes, Bob?
Kevin, is that scrubber something along the lines of a small Zamboni, let's say, where somebody sits on it and carries chemicals?
You can do a couple different ways. We're proposing one like that. What we do is we want to clean that floor every morning before people come in. We want to make sure that floor, especially this time of year, with the snow and everything else and the traffic coming through, even on days when we don't have events, storm, stampede games, Skyforce, that's something you could actually get on ride. And there's also, Bob, a need for that after the home show. That's something you can take on the concrete floor as well, clean that concrete really well before you do a dinner or something afterwards before we lay carpet on top of it. So basically, the one we have now, we're going to save time, we'll do a better job of cleaning, plus the labor over the course of time will save some money too.
How old is your current machine? Was it new when the facility was built?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, but it's at least 10 years old.
Okay, 'cause what I was getting at was, will we be doing $35,000 plus in 10 more years? I mean,
those machines, if you maintain them properly and you take care of them according to the operating manuals, which we will do, that's not an every 10-year procurement.
Okay, then your network upgrades. So is this basically a computer system?
We have computers now. We just don't have any way to network them together. So if I want to save something on a shared drive or something of that nature, we can't do that. We have to basically, if I want to see what someone else is doing, we share information. You basically save it on a thumb drive, you pass it around, and update your stuff, and then get it to Scott, where if everybody can keep control of their expense logs and things of that nature, I can go in and see where we're at any time without having to say, all right, everybody update your stuff, bring your reports in so I can look at them. It's just something that needs to happen as far as communication within the building.
Very good.
Okay, next. Here we have the $100,000 for appropriated that we talked about, and basically we need new carpet. For those that haven't been in the ballroom, that carpet is done. Those carpet squares have been replaced, and we've got splotches here and there. Most of the money that is appropriated will go to the ballroom carpet. There is some roof repair and some air wall replacement. What we would like to do is deal with the carpet first, and as we get toward the end of the year, as we see how we do compared to our budget, use some of those items from our operating budget is what we'd like to do. But first and foremost, carpet. Because if you add all those up, the 100 and the 50 and the 25 and the 30, I think it's a little bit more than 100,000, the way I do math.
Just to clarify, we are not asking you to appropriate more than 100,000, but we wanted to include a list of projects so that once the carpet replacement is completed, if that comes in less than 100,000, then we would potentially go on to the next item within the existing budget that we would have to work with.
Councilor Kavanaugh.
Mike, we have, I'm assuming that our appropriation of the sales of the entertainment tax funds here would not in any way jeopardize our repayment of the bonds, the schedule of our repayment.
Yes, and we should put together a sheet that we can give you that would explain all that, yes.
Well,
that is a fact.
If memory serves or correct me, we have quite a bit of money sitting in a reserve fund. Is that not true?
Yes, I don't know the exact amount, but we can get that to you.
Well, my question is, what is our intent to use? Why are we sitting with reserve fund when we could either, A, be taking care of some of this deferred maintenance now rather than waiting, and secondly, if we're not going to do that, why aren't we escalating our repayment of the bonds?
Okay. Here comes our finance director now.
A couple of things. For starters, we can't call the bonds, so we can't use that. You got about $1.7 million that would be available there. We've spread that out. You received this document back in about August, which was about, started in 2004 and it goes through 2012, laying out how we'd recommend using those funds. And it does in each year include $200,000 actually starting in 2009 for deferred maintenance.
So you have a plan, in other words, to take care of that 1.7?
Yes.
And if you could just give us a copy, I don't think I can find the one from August, so I'd appreciate it.
Do you know, is it deferred maintenance of just the convention center, or is it pavilion as well? Or?
Any other questions at this point?
Councilor Jamieson?
The carpet out there, wasn't that designed originally to be replaced in sections rather than the whole carpet at one time?
Yeah, what's happened, Bob, is the squares have been replaced, but it hasn't been maintained like it should be. And what happened is you've got dark squares where the new squares have been replaced. You've got splotches of the nice new squares, but the old ones are there and you can't clean them. It is a less expensive option, and if you maintain it and you replace them as you go, it looks like what's happened is that they've been replaced after it was too late. And so it really looks, it's a poor appearance right now for that room. You've got the beautiful woodwork along the walls, the lighting. We went out and bought some beautiful carts to present the food on, and the carpet is just needs to be replaced.
Thank you.
There's a couple of ways. There's been some proposals as to do the carpet squares again. I think we would like to go a different route where we would maintain it, get some extractors where we would take care of that carpet. When accident spills happen, clean them up right away. We've had some experience doing that in my other facilities, and I think we can do a good job of keeping it up.
Thank you.
Councilor Costello?
Scott, I was there on Saturday night, and your staff did a wonderful job at that event. I thought the squares were some new pattern you had put in.
I told them, I said if we could get a few more, we could spread them out more, and we could make it a design. But
my real question, though, is what's an air wall?
the air walls are the walls that are temporary walls that you bring in to shut the exhibition halls. Those have been done, if I'm not mistaken. I think we've got 3 sides of the 6 sides, possible sides of the air walls have been refinished. We just have a couple other ones that just, they look pretty poor as well. Most of them are done. In the rooms, they're okay for right now. It's just the big rooms between the X hall, the two sides between the X hall and then the back side, the X halls, between the X hall and the ballroom.
Councilor Kavanaugh?
And I don't know if Scott or Gene can answer this question, but the sheet that you just handed out, Gene, can you remind me what the 666 proposed capital amendments, what those were? In the 2008 budget. I assume we're not talking about the amendments in front of us now. I assume we did that last August.
The $666,000 you're looking at is actually the Washington Pavilion.
Okay.
This is this whole thing is for entertainment tax.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That 666 is the windows for the.
All right. So even at the end of 2012, we'll still have $1 million in unreserved fund. Have we thought about more funding of this deferred maintenance?
Well, we haven't. When you say more funding, we chose the $1 million as a cushion number to keep a kind of on reserve. Probably really don't want to go below that. Of course, you could, but we feel more comfortable keeping that around just as an emergency.
The reason I ask is, 2 to 3 years after that, the bonds are paid off, right?
Yes.
Okay.
2014, right?
I believe it's 14.
Yeah.
So does that then give us the opportunity to accelerate some of these maintenance costs?
Well, you'd certainly have more money to decide what to do with.
Unless we find something else for the entertainment tax. My concern is this deferred maintenance business. it concerns me that we have to come and amend our CIP to do things that we should have been doing in the first place.
Councilor Stagers?
Yes, Gene, you mentioned the Washington Pavilion windows. Is that, can you tell us again where that's at here on this sheet?
Yes, about midway through the sheet, it says proposed capital amendments. It's grade N. And if you go half, and it's starting in 2004, it's blank. When you get to 2008, there's $666,000. Not quite midway through the sheet.
Number Kevin was looking at.
Councilor Costello?
Gene, if we were to appropriate additional money, wouldn't we just be using up some of this reserve?
Sure.
And this reserve really...
You'd be taking it down faster than we've got laid out here.
Right, and depending on what happens with our sales tax receipts for the year as well, they both will impact it.
Sure.
Is it the plan to keep, the idea, was it the $1 million, was that to keep $1 million kind of in perpetuity?
Perpetuity, yes.
Just to have the balance for both the convention and the pavilion?
Yes.
Councilor Stagers?
Yeah, I found that proposed capital amendments for 2008 for the Washington Pavilion, that $666,329, does that also include the sign and the doors and the windows, everything?
I don't know that.
Okay.
Yeah, everything is in the '08 budget that you approved for this year, the sign, the windows. Yes.
The doors.
The doors, yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else?
Any other questions for Mr. Kavanaugh? Thank you very much. Welcome, Police Chief.
Yes. Good evening, Chief Doug Barthel, Police Department. We are requesting an amendment in our OSEP budget that will not need additional funds. We want to reallocate some money that we didn't use for new police cars to purchase a new animal control vehicle. Last year we switched the type of vehicles that we use. There's a photo there of the van that we would like to get rid of this year for this replacement, and there's also a picture of our new truck there. We're able to purchase the back of this truck separately. It's about $16,000 of the $41,000, and when the truck has reached the end of its life, then we're able to reuse that box on the next pickup, so we can use this over and over again. It's a stainless steel box. It's separate from the cab, as is the case with the van. So if they're hauling dead animals or skunks or you name it in there, it can be quite of an uncomfortable situation with that in there. So this new truck has worked out very well for us, and we would just like to speed up the process and move it up in the plan so that we can add it yet this year.
Any questions for Councilor Kavanaugh?
So Doug, you have one now and you're adding a second.
Correct, yes. That's a photo of our current one.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience with us today. I know we're going a little long, but there have just been so many good questions. Okay. We are finished with it. We are finished with this presentation. Okay, and again, thank you. And is it okay? I guess Councilor Costello.
Just wondering, are we going to vote on these? Is this the first meeting in March, or? And these are ordinances, so their first reading is March 3rd and 3rd.
Jean, would you just come to the microphone and answer that, please?
First reading is the 3rd, and the second reading is the 10th, I guess, or did we do a push? Yeah, second reading is the 10th. Yeah, part of this is going to be resolution, part of it is ordinance.
So,
okay, Councilor Stagers, a question?
So are we going to be voting on any resolution the 3rd at all? Just the 10th?
It'll be there. You can decide whether to vote on it or not, or delay it until the 10th. It'd be up to you guys.
Okay. Up to us.
Okay, I believe that we have completed our items on today's informational agenda. I know we have a land use committee meeting yet, and next week I know we're going to have a presentation on the 2008 sculpture walk, or our next sculpture walk, and also just a reminder to all of you that tomorrow night at 7 p.m. is the Whittier Cleanup organizational meeting over in the Red Barn near East Side Lutheran for those of you who want to attend that. So thank you all, and thank you, counselors, for being with us this long tonight, and staff, of course.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. Second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. We are adjourned.